Why does it feel like we are legitimately at the end of the series? I mean, we're not, I hope. But it feels like that. You smell me? Anyways, lots to talk about. Let's get into it.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
Before we go any further, I just want to say, go like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram to see some cool Kagurabachi colorings and some Jujutsu Kaisen artworks and all of that good stuff. Anyways, I talked about this in my last video, but I'm also going to be changing the formats of these videos to make them a little bit more sort of condensed and more chewable, I suppose, so hopefully you enjoy. Anyways, there's been some really cool character interactions and revelations, I guess you could call it, but I think the first thing that I absolutely have to talk about are the power. In case it wasn't visually obvious, Hokuzono is going all out of his way to show us the differences and parallels between Samura and Chihiro within this chapter. The opening panel of this is almost as if they were mirrored images of each other, like two sides of the same coin staring down the same goal. And even the panel of them attacking Samura is, again, like they are two sides to the same coin. However, where within this chapter we are less focused on Chihiro and what he has to say and against his father's assailant, but more so rather what Yora and Samura and their thought processes are and what they're dealing with currently. You see, around 30 chapters ago, Hokuzono gave perhaps the best stretch of chapters within this series, in my personal opinion, as far as I'm concerned. So much so that it cemented Samura as the best character within the series for me personally, and sparked me to create an entire deep dive onto his character. Chapters 70 to 73 explored Samura, his goals, his struggles, his hypocrisy, and most importantly his guilt, and how Yora exploited those things in order to bring Samura on side. The figuratively and literally blind Samura saw no other option than to take on the task of killing the swordbearers by the way of Suzaku, severing their contracts, and then finally killing the swordmaster. And this goal drove Samura to cast a spell upon his daughter and himself that would have them forget each other. And a short while after this, Samura came face to face with Chihiro, who, much like himself, was steadfast in his goals on stopping the Hishaku, the Shinoichi, in order to avoid another malediction. Now, Chihiro's conviction, his stubbornness, his willingness to tear his body to pieces in order to achieve his goal showed Samura the light. And again, figuratively and literally, where Samura held his eyes tightly shut, Chihiro lit up a path forward to him, and now that very light may end up proving too bright for Samura. Quite literally as well, considering Chihiro is quite literally on fire within this chapter. But during this fight, the actions of Chihiro swayed Samura into opening his eyes, and those same eyes may now hinder him, and for a moment, Samura's newfound vision causes him to sort of falter, as for the first time in a long time, he's able to see everything clearly, even the people who were about to die to Yora's centipede attack. And I think it's here where the parallels really show up, because earlier on in the series, Chihiro was at a point where he had a trouble accepting help. He was choosing to try and carry the burden of revenge and this pain all by himself, until he had a turning point with the Masumi, who then convinced him to let them help, to let them lighten the load here. And Samura, similarly, is now having the same sort of thing happen. Throughout the entire series, he has been shown and has been verbally telling us he's going to do this alone, so much so that he was willing to forget his daughter to protect her in a twisted way. And that mentality still stands strong as he's watching the centipede attack fly towards these pedestrians, and he's actively choosing to turn his back on his opponent in order to try and save them. But it's here where we are told to focus. After over 2 years of Kagurabachi, we are finally getting to see a glimpse of what it'd be like to see Togo fucking Sheba in action on the battlefield. Finally, he is appearing more and more, and I imagine that he's going to act as more of a supporting character throughout this fight. And let me tell you, this man is fast as fuck. Sheba Togo, the proclaimed pinnacle of sorcery by Yora himself, is able to teleport into this cafe and save, at bare minimum, 5 individuals before the shockwave of the centipede finishes breaching the bloody windows. Now, I want to point out a very cool little detail. As Sheba teleports into the car, this gal right here gets immediately disappeared. Immediately. It's like he switches places with her almost instantly. This is a man who is quite possibly moving faster than Samura, who so far in the story has been shown to be a master of the fastest sword drawing technique within the series. And all while this is happening, he simply says one word: focus. And as he says this, by the way, cool little detail on the panel, you can actually see the teleportation marks appearing on the panel of the manga panel. It's quite cool that Sheba always seems to get these cool panels, because the last time he was involved in a scuffle, he ended up using a lighter to burn the panel away, which is also pretty cool. But he tells us to focus on the task at hand, focus on the man you're in combat with right now, and most importantly, focus on the job that you said you would do, heal Chihiro. Now, the subject of focus, I think, really comes into play after Sheba's appearance as the narration kicks in. Quote, "The man before him is wrecked, flesh and bone by the same shockwaves, yet his bloodthirsty gaze never wavers from his foe as he readies his sword." This statement right here, I think, really tells us just how far Chihiro has come since the story's beginning. At the beginning of the story, Chihiro was a character who was closed off almost emotionally and was kind of methodically volatile in his actions and how he pursued his quest. He would change directions willy-nilly in order to achieve his goal here. But more importantly that, Chihiro was a boy when he started here. When we started seeing him in this series, he was a boy playing a man's game. And now that boy has grown into a man. He's battle-tested, he's grown, he's experienced, and more importantly, he's focused. For example, let's do a little scene comparison here. Yora and Chihiro have met just twice within this series. Once at the Rakuzaichi, and now once again in chapter 102. When he and Yora first met, all of those emotions that led Chihiro along this path erupted within him. Anger, rage, sadness, regret, they all burst from him uncontrollably when coming face to face with the man who had orchestrated his father's demise and ultimately ruined his life and set him on this course of revenge. And now, if you take that first meeting and put that side by side with what we are seeing now, we are seeing a man who stands defiant in the face of overwhelming power, in the face of a power that his dad told him was completely different. Defiant in the injuries of the attacks on his body, defiant and focused, which brings me into the next part of this video. Alongside focus being a sort of prominent factor within this chapter, so too is defiance. Chihiro standing defiant in front of Yora, Yora standing defiant in front of them, but most importantly here, possibly the defiance of the Swordmaster against Yora. Now, we are going to dive into a little bit of theory crafting here from myself, but I would be willing to bet whatever Yora is seeing, so too is Soga. He is aware that Yora is no longer above him and is instead aware that Yora is currently fighting against Chihiro and Samura. A couple of chapters ago, Soga even mentioned that the enchanted blades were moving again and he could sense that. So now we have Yora who mentioned this in this very chapter, that the Swordmaster is no longer invading his body at all and is instead probing Yora's intentions, and Yora decides that by defeating these two worthy opponents in front of him, he will gain Soga's favour. Now, in a previous video, which, by the way, Shueisha claimed, Shueisha, again boys, we are just getting absolutely run through by Shueisha. But in the previous video, I theorized that Soga realistically has no reason whatsoever to join forces with Yora, based on the simple fact that what Soga did on Shikoku, no matter how fucked up it was, by his reckoning, he did that for the good of Japan. Whereas Yora, on the other hand, stands in stark contrast to that. He wants to turn the Shinoichi against Japan in order to inflict order and rule over the nation. He's willing, in this very chapter, to use the Shinoichi to essentially target civilians in order to distract Samura to defeat him. Now, I mentioned earlier that Yora and Soga seem aware of each other's surroundings due to the Shinoichi. Think of these two like a shared perspective, like a two-way walkie-talkie radio here. Whatever Soga sees, Yora can see, and so too, whatever Soga is seeing, so can Yora. Now, right now, Yora is staring down someone who looks almost identical to Kunishiki Rokihira. And once upon a time, Soga was the most trusted ally of Kunishiki. He's the brother-in-law of him. And I believe this information right here is why all of a sudden, upon clashing blades with Chihiro, Yora's eyes return to normal. It's a very subtle detail, I think, but it's there. And I'm theorizing that right here, right now, Soga made up his mind and is going to actively stop Yora from using the shit, or at least try to. Just before their clash, Yora's eyes are shaded in black as normal, and upon their clash, they turn to normal. Now, I'd be willing to bet that this is either Soga now. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, for some reason, this battle is giving me struck, because how does Yora win this? How can he win this? What, does he die here? Does he bow out? Or will he play a card that we've yet to think about? He still has sorcery, apparently. We've not seen that, and because he's not technically contracted to Shinoichi, he still has his own sorcery. So there is that possibility. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments what you think we are going to see here. But as always, I'm happy to be back, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram and support the Patreon. And as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.